She's starting out right.
Call the meeting order. Reflect all council members present. I will move into our department reports. Starting with code.
This is from the time period of February the 1st to February the 28th. We had a total of 45 code inspections, 25 written permits, collected $5,516 for permits. We have 11 new businesses. We had 3 closed businesses. Major projects, we have a medical office building in West Springs open under a temporary CO. And the Dollar General on East Spring Street is completed. The city marshal, he removed 21 signs on the roadway, wrote 37 repair cleanup notices and re-inspections. Had 5 investigations of tampering and theft for utilities, and issued 3 citations. And under the historic preservation, we welcome the new member, Mr. James Woodall. Planning and zoning, you got the zoning ordinance text amendments, commission recommended approval.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Electric and telecom.
Thank you, Mayor. MEAG bill was $1,082,000 last month. Fixed cost was down to 75%, about 5% down from last month. Telecommunications, we had a 1.6 gigabit peak usage. We are in the planning stages for another gigabit link back to 56 Marietta Street with extra capacity to be ready for that when it gets to 2 gigs. Our existing links are 2 gig, and we're beginning to bump that. So we are in the planning stages. Probably mid this year, first of next year before we have to do that. But we've got some plans in place to change some stuff around, and probably will not change the, actually we might even see some savings when we do that. Items of interest, we have updated the QAM system for the downstream, which allows more capacity to go to the modems. I am still not exactly happy with the way it's running. We will continue to update those until we get that exactly right. Our premium channels right now are changed with a trap. And we spend a day, once a week, and that's all 2 men do, we're changing and moving those traps. We're going to start moving those over to the box. A customer would not have to have our digital service to be able to do this. They can just get the box and get their premium channel. It allows us better ways to control, less theft, and the customer will actually get more for the same amount of money. Instead of 1 HBO, they'll get 6 HBOs. So we're going to migrate all those channels off of that onto the box, and that allows us extra space inside our system for channels that we are contractually required to add from some of our providers. And I'll let y'all know that the first one will be Playboy, the second will be Cinemax, and then we'll roll on through those. But they'll all be pushed off. Hopefully this time next year we'll be done. The Davis-Lacey Street project is complete. Staff is completing a punch list for the contractor to come back and fix little bits and pieces there. We'll give you an update on the South Broad T. We set the first pedestrian lighting today. It's not on, but you can ride down there and look at it and see what it looks like. These are some of the ones, the one right in front of Milo's, and 3 right across the road where the retaining walls are. These are sitting inside the concrete. Project is still due to be complete sometime toward the end of May with a full completion at the punch list in the next month. If you remember, we started working on this project in 2007. So it's been a long time coming to get this project toward the end. There is a small issue in front of Ms. Pelham's house. There is no way that any of us could change it without spending a lot of money. There's a high pressure gas line, another gas line, a water line, and our pole line. And when you start messing with a high-pressure gas line, you start talking about tens of thousands of dollars to move it. You start moving water lines, you interrupt people's services, and you start talking about tens of thousands of dollars to move it. And there was only so much right-of-way we could acquire, so the project does take a couple little S-turns around a couple of the poles. At Miss Pelham's house is so close to the road. We have a little way, you still have a 5-foot sidewalk for people to walk on, but it's not exactly like I would like it, but it is the best for the public's money. We got an update on the LCI, which is the North Broad project. You remember we started that in 2011. You know, these are two totally separate projects. One is a T, a transportation enhancement. The other one is an LCI, a Livable Cities Initiative. Both federally funded, but I saw the surveyors up on North Broad today, and I talked to Mr. Preston. He has started working on right-of-way acquisition. The engineer is sending me and Rodney the preliminary drawing. We're going to mark it up, move some stuff around, send it back to him, and hopefully we should get all that done sometime. The utility certified sometime in 16, with a start date sometime early mid-17. And move that project forward. But they're both moving about as fast as the feds will let you move. A lot of steps you got to take. You're dealing with the DOT and the federal government, and then you're dealing with a lot of expensive utilities to work around. And we're trying to do it at the best possible price. I'll take any questions you have.
Right, on the internet
Yes, sir.
thing, since we adopted that new policy on usage, has there been any changes in those?
We have notified the people and we're trying to work out a deal where we just notify them and get them to use less, and some of them have. They're using less. Some of them are still not. And we are starting the process of working with billing to be able to get that billing in place to start charging them what y'all allowed us to put on there.
Okay.
Any more questions, Brian? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Finance.
Thank you, Mayor. February was a busy month for accounts payable. They entered 2,086 invoices. Since February is always a busy month with annual contracts and such. The local option sales tax came in at $132,826. Moving on to the financial, the revenues compared to this time last year are about the same for general fund. Expenses are up a little bit, but again, a lot of your annual renewals come in about this time. Utilities is right on that 16% mark for revenues and expenses, so they're doing well. And solid waste, their revenues are right at that 16% mark, and their expenses are below the 16% mark. And I'll take any questions if you have.
Is it too early in the year to draw any conclusions on that increase in loss taxes? This is looking like we've got a reasonably good increase over last year. Is that?
It's still early. Christmas was really good this year, so that's why we had a big bump last month, and then February's about on par with last year. So.
Okay.
Any other questions on finance? Okay, thank you. Fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fire department had 190 calls for service in February. 81 of those were med-assist calls. We were down in total calls about 43 versus the last month, which is a good thing. Bring you something more at hand is Mr. Michael Stokes from ISO was at the fire department this morning. We went through that process. It'll be about 180 days, he said, probably before we get the final results of it, but I feel pretty comfortable and think everything went well. Appreciate Rodney, the work he done getting us all that information, and I look forward to see what comes out in 180 days. Pending your questions, that's kind of where we are.
Okay, move on in the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Police department had 3,994 calls for service, 250 court cases, 384 hours of training. Part 1 crimes right now, year to date, running right at 10% lower than last year to date, so we hope we can keep that trend. Part 2 crimes are about 7.5% below where they were at the same time last year. Hopefully we can stay there. Had 102 adults arrested, 3 juveniles. Of course, we had a BB gun match, which we've been supporting that a pretty good while. That 4-H team always does well. They actually have some national champions come out of the Walden County and Monroe area folks, so we're proud to do that. And we had the good chocolate walk that everybody's familiar with, and we had a lot of chocolate got to eat, so it was even cold and whatever back there. Pending your questions, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Solid waste.
Thank you, Mayor. Our February report hadn't changed much from January. We did have an increase in the recycling tonnage, a little over 133 tons compared to 98 tons in January. Much of that came from the yard treatments. We were up 115 tons in February compared to 80 tons in January. Scrap tires, collected a little over 3 tons in scrap tires, 176 units. Pretty much everything else is pretty consistent. Just like to say, we did get our front loader truck last month, and it's online, and it's doing well. And I'll take any questions you might have.
Just a comment about your new truck. One of the daycare sons told me that was the highlight of their day. All those kids, they want to come out and see in the truck. But they complimented your staff, the way they showed them the truck too.
Okay.
So that was good.
Danny, the Great American Cleanup, is it this month?
April 24th,
Okay.
the week of April 24th.
Anything else? Thank you, Danny. Streets and transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report's reflective for the month of February. On the admin side, we rented out the community building 5 times. Our fleet maintenance division completed 108 work orders. Our grounds crew picked up a little bit over 1.5 tons, around 3,000 pounds of litter throughout the seats, throughout the streets. They are getting in full swing as far as cutting all of our city-owned facilities, the library, playhouse, community building, all that stuff. They're getting, grass is starting to grow a little bit with the rain that we're getting, and those guys will be getting in the full swing. Our street division, we've been focusing on repairing some bad spots in our streets throughout the city. We had 15 street repairs done this month, and we got a really good list compiled of areas that we're going to focus on over the next week or so. So we should see a drastic improvement from the hard winter that we had with our streets coming undone. A lot of potholes around, but we're knocking those out, and as they come in, as they get reported on a pretty consistent basis. Our sign and markings division completed 71 work orders, 57 of those being new signs. First part of the year, that's a goal for Steve, and that we try to focus on getting ahead of the game. That way when we replace, we have the stuff in stock to replace as those signs go bad or get tore up. Either way. Building maintenance division, 64 work orders completed throughout the city facilities, and I'll be glad to take any questions regarding the Streets and Transportation Department.
Okay, thank you, Jeremiah. Water, sewer, gas, and stormwater.
Thank you, Mayor. Everything's pretty much in line with January's numbers. You're going to see an increase in water distribution work orders. That due to the colder weather. You also see that down in natural gas where we sold 57,402 MCF of gas. So had an increase in those two items. Everything else is pretty much in line. As far as points of interest, an update on the 2013 CDBG. They currently installed a little over 4,100 feet of new pipe. So that project's moving along pretty well. Slowed down a good bit this week with the rain. It's kind of taking effect on us. We're on the section from Hamlet over to Landers. So it's been a pretty tough last week and a half. We've got one new sponsor at the training facility, Clearwater Solutions. It's a $500 sponsorship, and they're looking to make out an annual sponsorship. And we also just reached an agreement with Baxter. We're going to be providing their employees the confined space training. We've met with them multiple times. They come down at the facility, liked everything they saw. We're going to start off with 45 employees, and once they're fully staffed, we'll do 200 employees a year. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity. Actually open our eyes up to maybe some other, instead of focusing on utility companies, maybe we should be looking at some industry. So we're going to gear up to talk to some of those guys and see if we can work on that side. But anyway, if you've got any questions, you want to have an answer. Thank you.
That concludes the department reports. We're looking at committee information, finance.
We don't have anything this evening, Mayor.
Okay. Airport.
Do we need to go on and approve the minutes for the airport meeting?
I think they're
Or
mostly just for information.
Oh, okay then.
But there is a meeting tomorrow.
Okay. All right. We don't have anything.
Public Works.
Nothing on the agenda.
Utilities.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Middlebrooks.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Asking your permission to purchase 25 fire hydrants and assemblies. This is part of our CIP this year. It's the second year of a 7-year plan to replace 177 fire hydrants throughout our system. Low bid was HD Supply, $53,843.25.
Are there any questions for Mr. Middlebrooks about this? Is there a motion that we approve the fire hydrant purchase?
I make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll recommend that to council.
Thank you.
Full council. Looks like that's all we have, Mayor.
Public safety.
Mayor, we got one item on the agenda tonight, approval of out-of-state training. I'll let Chief ask you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We got 2 lieutenants accepted into executive planning course at the U.S. Fire Administration, which is the equivalent of sending a leader in your police department to the FBI Academy to pick up some kind of training. This has happened in the past. Really, the cost it will incur be per diem for their stay, travel, all other expenses. Staying up there is reimbursed. So I'm asking that you allow Lieutenant Dykes and Lieutenant Owens to attend from May the 11th through May the 22nd. And want to say one caveat about those the fire hydrants. That's a good thing that you're doing. It has a direct. That was something, a good topic of discussion today, going from the 2 outlets to 3 outlets. It's a help on your ISO. So I really appreciate y'all doing those improvements to that system.
Any other questions about the out-of-state training? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mayor, we'll bring this to full council next week. That's all we have in public safety tonight.
Thank you. Economic development.
Ask Ms. Crossett to come up. While she's walking up, I'll ask her to say more about it, but if you could have been at the meeting last week when people from all over the country came for the National Main Street Convention, came to Monroe, and heard people talk about this town, that was awesome. The comments that they were making, I think those of us that are here don't see what we have sometimes. And these people that came, with, I sat at lunch table with 2 ladies from Michigan, and Lee was at the table also, and they just couldn't quit talking about what they saw here. So maybe you could just expand on that some.
Yes, thank you very much. We had a very successful tour with the National Main Street Conference, and these people from all over the U.S. We had between 30 and 40 people that came out to Monroe to see some of the projects that we had done in our downtown. We had too much to show, actually. We barely got all of it in. Very impressed. And a fellow manager from Georgia, from Milledgeville, said, "You guys should have the state conference here." I said, "We don't have a hotel, but we would love to have the state conference. We don't have enough rooms." And so it was very positive. They were very impressed with the kind of people that we have in our city that are willing to take on projects in the private sector alongside the support from the city. And so that's a reflection of the people we have here and your leadership that made that possible. So thank you. That was very successful, great representation of our state and of Monroe. So very proud of that. As the weather's starting to warm up, we're going to start seeing a lot more events in the community happening. Also, a lot of people are out driving around looking at locations. So I've had 4 calls just this week of businesses that want to relocate into Monroe. So it's a good season for us. We're excited to start filling up some more empties and entertain more conversation and interest from businesses looking to move here from neighboring communities, which is great. They're expanding and people are getting in Monroe. And someone from Watkinsville, someone from Covington, and someone from Artsville that are looking in Monroe. Also wanted to let you know that the LCI application was submitted yesterday for the Rails by Trails project, and we passed a resolution for it a couple of months ago. That was all turned in. We'll hopefully hear something by the end of the year for that, and we're excited to see things moving forward. Any questions or comments?
You might want to also comment on the luncheon at Athens Tech.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. We had a very successful luncheon we partnered with Athens Tech to help them showcase 2 new programs. One program's new, one has just been kind of revamped and renamed. One is Industrial Systems and the other is Machine Tool Technology. Both of those programs feed directly into jobs in our local industries. They're great programs. One is relocating from the Athens Tech campus to Monroe. All of those programs are great starting points for people, whether they have job training and want to increase their skills, or if you have none. You can start at Athens Tech, and I learned so much from the process. Ms. Reed was wonderful to work with, and it was great to show that to some community leaders. And if anyone would like to go and see the program, I would be happy to set that up. It's worth all of us knowing and understanding so we can help with the word out in the community what's available.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay. I'll have some items of discussion coming up next week. Give a brief overview. Have an upcoming public hearing, a rezone, 830 Georgia Highway 138. Want to give us a little brief description of that?
Yeah, this, the property, the major part of the property is on B3, and recently they had changed one parcel to PRD, and they're just requesting to put the PRD back into the B3.
We have an appointment, Historic Preservation Commission. I think that's the one that,
This would be hopefully a reappointment, the person we just put in a couple of months ago, Mr. Woodall.
okay. We'll have the second reading of the zoning ordinance code text amendments. We have a request from the Monroe United Methodist Church for the closure of the boulevard. I think all of y'all got your packets. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask department heads, call Renee, call me, any questions.
Yeah, if I could make just a couple of comments on this one during this discussion period, I guess. As I know we have people in the audience tonight that represent both sides of that issue. That is in my district, and it's been interesting last few weeks. I've had more contacts on this issue than anything since I've been on the council. And it's been some interesting comments, I guess. That my bigger concern on it is that some people are getting very emotional on this issue, and I would hope that we can resolve the issue without too many hard feelings, I guess, because it is very emotional on some people's sides. And I think that part of that emotion is from perhaps people not understanding on either side of the issue, understanding the feelings of the other side. And I would encourage, and I know we got some people here tonight, and I would encourage y'all to sit down and talk to each other to really clarify issues, clarify the position, both from the church and from particularly the residents on Boulevard. Because there are some strong feelings there, and I know that the church thinks it's a safety issue, and I think it probably is under the current configuration. But some people think that the church probably brought on some of those issues themselves, and maybe they could address them in a different way. Some of the people, and I've gotten 3 emails in the last 3 days from people throughout the city that said that the church is trying to pull something over and get something for free from the city, and the church is trying to get something free from the city. And I've tried to respond to those that that's not what the church's request is here, is to get anything free from the city. So I just think that there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of talk, and maybe that needs to be clarified. And I know that next week we'll probably have ample people here to clarify issues. I expect several people here to discuss this on both sides, which is good. I'm glad we are, but I just don't want it to get too emotional. I think people need to understand, because either side of this issue has valid points, and we need to address those. So I just encourage you to try to address that.
That's a good point. Like I say, everybody's got the information, and you do your due diligence to read the information and make your decision. This is what you're elected to do. Use the facts and don't go out on folks' emotions on what's either right or wrong. This is what you guys are elected to do. Use the facts of what your department head is giving you and make your own decision. And that being said, we'll move on.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure can.
Brian, can you shed some light on the Windstream comment in the report? I was out of town all last week, and the chances of...
I'll tell you what my discussions with Windstream. Windstream has two ways this can work out. One, they get a permanent easement forever for that line. That line feeds Boulevard down to Barrett and back out onto some of Alcovey.
Right.
And this is just coming from their engineer, or they will have to be paid to move that line.
But
one way, shape, or form.
There's a possibility that there's nothing done. If the church is cooperative, the line just stays there. There's no money.
They would have to have from what Jay's told me, what they told me from Windstream, they have a permanent easement that allow that line to stay there forever, or be paid to move the line one way or the other. They didn't care either way.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question I had on Jeremiah's report, it was talking about we could potentially lose grant money if we close any amount of distance of street. Can you speak in terms of dollars on what that could potentially be?
Or specific dollars?
I mean ballpark, yeah.
Well, we get a certain amount of money per center lane mile throughout the city. Roughly 75-ish miles, center lane miles throughout the city. You're referring to the LMIG program.
Yeah.
What that does is we get a lump sum. I think the last check was for around 114,000, whatever that math adds up to that section. of street.
Per mile?
Per center lane mile.
So if you take that, and that road is 1,000 feet ballpark, I don't know, I haven't measured it.
I had measured it.
Is that a decent guess, 1,000 feet?
It's probably 1,000.
I think if you do that, and you divide it by 5,280 feet in a mile, and you divide that into $114,000 per mile in grant money, it equates to about $300 a year.
A minute figure.
And the only other thing I just want everybody to understand this math. So we would potentially forego $300 a year in revenue, grant revenue. But yet you said the road's in great shape right now?
Right.
But maybe in 10 years it needs asphalt?
Probably striping at the most. I don't think it would need a top coat in 10 years, no.
Okay, 20 years?
In 20 years, the lifespan of a heavily traveled road calls for an overhaul. With the volume of traffic there, out there again, a couple of hard winters, who knows?
Right.
Very minimal maintenance over the next 15 years, I would say.
I just wanted to point out that we get zero tax revenue from that section of road we're talking about. There's not, is that right, Renee? Not $1 comes in from property owners on that little section? So my point is, if you do have to pave it one time in 20 years, which is likely, it costs you, $30,000. Well, I just got a quote on a 400-foot of street. It was about 15, so.
15,000?
Yeah, for 2 inches of asphalt.
I don't think we need to put dollar figures on this right now. This is something you can discuss. You're doing a lot of what ifs and,
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I just wanted to, you told me to ask the department heads a question.
Go ahead. I don't know if he's prepared. But yeah, you're right. If you gotta pave it, you gotta pave it 15 years.
Okay. And I had a few questions. I just wanted to ask them. Emergency vehicles, Pat's not here, but he said that he recommended like a cul-de-sac or something put in. I don't know. Can anybody speak to that?
Those are in our development regs.
Yeah, they're in development regs. They have to be.
It's what we would require of anybody.
I think if we left the street open,
If you left the street open.
but close it.
No, if you close
To
it.
close, not abandon the street, if we kept the street.
Right.
But closed it at Broad. Then it would
And
require
at
cul-de-sac.
whatever portion you would close it, you would, if it were any other property owner, we would require to those development regs, and I think that's how it was.
So if you close the street and then you
If any portion remained public, I guess, to that point, that it would need to be to those regs, I think is what.
but if it was sold to the church,
And
Is that a
I
different
assume
story?
The whole street would have to be, in order for them not to have to do any type of.
I guess I just want to make sure that if it were to happen, can emergency vehicles get to the church? I don't see how they can't. Pat said that would be a problem.
You'd have a problem turning around. If you got to get to the end of that road, well, me and Pat discussed it, and I don't see how you turn a fire truck around without.
You just go through the front driveway?
Chief, you might ask that, but I know some of my bucket trucks have had troubles making those turns.
We can run a fire truck over there and see, but, I think you gotta go back to whatever's in your ordinances or the plan and make sure we meet that, but that's on your deal. But,
Okay.
we'll take one down.
No, this that street, just work.
And then the last thing I just wanted to clarify was that Sam Serio, he said that if we did this, it would actually reduce our cost.
It's my understanding that the crosswalk was, designed, the way they designed it with some brick inlay. I think he addressed that with us last week. And so that if we decided to close it, that work would not be done.
Okay.
Right, and sidewalk instead, so it would be a little cheaper work. You still gotta put sidewalk across.
Yeah, I was just shocked. I figured he'd say
Yeah.
it'd cost more money. But that's really all.
I mean, because in the original plans, it had, they were gonna dig up that crosswalk right there, and put the brick and lay in there.
Okay.
And you would have two ADA compliant ramps that come down to that crosswalk. It wouldn't be there if you just had a sidewalk all
Right.
across there. So there's a little less work.
I'm good. That's all I had.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Approval of the Walton County SRO program agreement. Chief, you want to speak on that?
The agreement is basically, there's nothing changed in the agreement other than Article 3 on page 4. We got about right at 70%, like a 6.9% increase in what they'll pay us for those services. But other than that, it's the same agreement that we've had the last however many years.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I back up on, at this age, sometime your brains.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the windstream thing, the wire moving, if they had to move the wire, at whose expense would that be?
I would assume that would be the churches. The city doesn't have it. If they can't come to an agreement on an easement.
Yeah, the church, they'd have to
I would
either,
assume that would be on the churches.
they'd have to either leave it or pay for it.
One or the other, yes, sir.
Okay.
If the church came to an agreement with Windstream to leave it there, then, you know, it would be no cost whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay. You get finished with SRO?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's the only change, the same as it's been.
Okay. Item 6, resolution for the Electric Cities of Georgia participation contract.
Yes, sir. Electric Cities of Georgia is looking to change the way they charge us for some of their services. The main one is engineering and training and safety. I've been to several meetings and went over this a dozen times, and basically the city of Monroe will save money if we vote to do this, and that's what I'm all about. I like to save some money. We didn't get this from Electric Cities in time for the attorneys to look at it, or we would have had it here tonight for y'all to vote on it in committee form. But Rosenthal said he would have this to me before the end of first of next week, and we'll have it for the full council. It's just a small change inside those intergovernmental agreements that basically they have brought on some new business in Florida, and those cities will be paying more for their training and safety than we will, because as being original members. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Okay. And the MEAG bond violation.
That needs to be done quickly.
That will be next week.
Yes, sir, that's important.
Okay. All right, any questions on that? Okay. No other questions, any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I got our bucket truck all out of order a couple months ago.
Great.
You know, we'll take the care.
I don't believe that.
Came in.
It's out front.
Yeah, right out front. And it'll be going in service Thursday.